All right, Dr. Barnard, it's so nice for you to join me today on the podcast. I think this is the third time I've actually talked with you, and it's always a pleasure to have you on and to pick your brain. And our community loves it. You're a big hero for a lot of people, so thank you for joining me today.
Well, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
So today I want to talk about, you're so knowledgeable in this world and you have so much information, and I feel like there's so much information out there that it's hard to know exactly what to make of it and what to trust and who to trust. And I know that your work has a lot of integrity and you've been doing this for a long time. So I want to start with talking about dairy and in general, and maybe some misconceptions about dairy, and also some specific questions that I hear often. So, can you just start by talking a little bit about dairy and kind of your take on it?
Sure. Well, maybe the place to start is not maybe with my ideas, but with what Mother Nature had in mind. Mother Nature made milk for a certain reason that's not too hard to figure out. When a mother has a baby, the milk is for the baby. And that's it. And even that baby isn't going to drink milk very long. After the age of weaning, the baby doesn't drink milk. So for mammals make milk for their babies. And the reason I mention that is that what constitutes the milk is a formula that will help that baby to grow, but will not help you so much if you are not a little nursing infant. So it's loaded with fat and all the calories that are going to help that baby to kind of fatten up. And it also has some hormones in it that aren't really so dangerous over the short run, but are not so good over the long run. It's got a ton of sugar, and those are calories for the growing baby. So if it's human milk is designed for a human baby. If it's cow's milk, it's designed for a bovine baby, and so forth. So if you send some to a laboratory, they'll tell you, well, most of the calories come from sugar. There's also a lot of fat, and it's the worst kind of fat for anybody. But if you're a baby and you're only drinking it for some months, it's not going to hurt you. But saturated fat is the main fat, and it raises cholesterol levels. It's linked to Alzheimer's disease and all kinds of other things. And maybe the last bad thing I should say about dairy is that it has hormones in it. Uh, Estradiol is the main hormone in a woman's body during her reproductive years, and it gets into her milk and it gets into cheese and ice cream. And so you have your 7-year-old son and you give him some cheese pizza and he's eating estradiol. Or your 8-year-old daughter, she's eating, we already have all the hormones that nature wanted us to have. And when we sort of defy what Mother Nature had in mind and start eating milk products, we're getting extra hormones that we really don't need. So milk is linked to prostate cancer and breast cancer and a number of other issues. So maybe I've depressed people enough with that, but those are some of the main things.
Well, it's important to know. And so, two things with that. I was just thinking about this morning, and I thought, if I told somebody that I was going to drink like human milk today, right? People would think I was crazy, right? You're going to drink human milk.
Right.
What? But if I was going to drink milk from cows or goats, even, people wouldn't think I was crazy. So I think there's that bit too. But I think that you bring up, it's a very good point. Milk is there for a reason, and it's for a very specific reason, and we've taken that outside of that reason.
Well, I suspect 10 or 12,000 years ago, it did seem pretty crazy. When people figured out how to make cows or sheep or goats or camels stand still and they would milk them and take their milk and drink it themselves. The first people who did that were probably regarded as, what the heck are you doing? This is really weird. We don't do that stuff. And in fact, until fairly recently, in many, many countries, particularly in Asia, dairy is just not a part of the diet at all. It never was. But it kind of caught on, and once something catches on and becomes traditional, people stop questioning it. They just think, haven't we always eaten ice cream? You know, like, no, this is something new, and there's reasons why it's a big problem for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think you kind of partly answered my next question. And this was, so when people are thinking about this, oftentimes they'll say, okay, well, if it's because it's too calorie dense, we're just going to do low fat dairy. And so low fat dairy is the answer, because a lot of people also think that there's a lot of health benefits of dairy. So low fat yogurt, for example, or low fat cheese is then the answer. But like you mentioned, there's the hormone bit that doesn't go away, no matter how low fat it is. So can you hit on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, the main nutrient in low-fat milk is sugar. So for all the people who will never have a donut or a piece of candy, what do you think you're eating when you're consuming? Whether it's full-fat milk or low-fat milk, sugar predominates. It's lactose. And the reason it's particularly famous is that most of the people on Earth don't digest lactose very well after they leave childhood behind, because the enzymes, the lactase enzymes that break that lactose sugar apart, start to disappear. And so you get a gurgly stomach or cramps or diarrhea when you consume it. White people, Caucasians, many of them carry a mutation that allows the enzymes that are there during infancy. A nursing baby has lactase enzymes that can break up the lactose sugar. They disappear really quickly for most everybody, all mammalian species, except white humans carry a mutation that causes the lactase enzyme to persist for a longer period of time. And so they can eat ice cream without immediate symptoms, but that's a problem, because then they're exposing themselves to hormones and other problems that put them at higher risk later on. So that spells breast cancer, it spells prostate cancer and other issues that aren't going to help them.
Mm-hmm. So for everyone else who's lactose intolerant, you're better off for it.
It's lactose intolerance is absolutely normal, not just for humans, but for all mammals. And by the way, let me just maybe say a quick word for anybody who has a heart for animals. Not everybody does, but those who do. A lot of times they'll say, well, I don't really want to eat meat because I don't like the idea of slaughtering animals. Well, the dairy industry is the granddaddy of all of them, because, not to go into great detail, but the reason I'm mentioning this is a lot of our patients here and our research participants, once they looked into it, they found this to be the most motivating thing. To get milk, you have to impregnate cows. It's done by artificial insemination, and not very delicately. And 9 months later, they bear a calf. And the calf, if he's a male, becomes killed for veal. If she's a female, she's taken away and raised in isolation. And then they impregnate her again 3 months later. And she's basically just this baby-making machine. But they take the babies away so that we can take the milk. And so all those babies are killed. Either for veal, or sometimes they grow up to be a beef bull, so to speak, or they join the dairy herd. And a cow in nature lives to be about 20, but on a dairy farm they live to be 4, and then they're slaughtered because they're just not as productive anymore. So it's kind of a creepy industry when you look at it. So for some people that's a motivator, and for our environmentalist friends. The methane that everyone's worried about, because it's a much more potent greenhouse gas compared to CO2, many times more powerful. Where do you think it's coming from? One of the big sources is the belching cows that we have. We have a mass of cattle in the United States that outweighs the mass of people, and each one of them is as big as a sofa belching methane. So one or another of these things usually causes people to think, what am I been doing by patronizing this industry? So
Right.
there you have it.
Yeah. And so that brings me, actually, that was a good segue into my next question. So if we get away from dairy, animal produced dairy, right? There's a big range of vegan options out there, vegan yogurt, vegan cheese, vegan milk. You can get just about anything vegan. So I would like your take on that. And I imagine, so what do you think about vegan versions of dairy products?
Most are terrific. And nowadays everybody knows you can go to the dairy case, and it's really not a dairy case anymore, because they've got almond milk and soy milk and rice milk and oat milk, and they've got everything there. And most people have tried these things. Let me make a pitch for soy milk, though. Soy milk is the one the US government says that's fine because it's got as much protein as cow's milk. And the old idea was that soy milk would cause cancer. You would hear people say this. It turned out to be the opposite. What they were getting at is that there are what some people call phytoestrogens in soy milk They're actually isoflavones that have a cancer preventive effect. So the reason we're making a pitch for soy, whether it's tofu or soy milk or tempeh or miso or whatever, is the women who consume the most soy products have about 30% less breast cancer risk compared to their friends who don't consume soy. So it's a big thing. And if a person has been diagnosed with breast cancer in the past, soy also greatly reduces mortality by about maybe 25 or 30%. For men, it does the same thing, but it's prostate cancer. The men consuming more soy have less risk of prostate cancer. So that goes beyond the other non-dairy milks. And I'm going to say some bad things about one of them, and that's coconut milk. And I'm going to break everyone's heart. Coconut milk is creamy. It makes your pudding recipe really delicious, but it's got a lot of saturated fat in it, just like the cow's milk. Don't do that. Don't eat that. Coconuts are great on trees. You can put coconut fat on your skin, but I wouldn't eat it because it's really, really saturated.
Okay. Okay, good to know. So I asked our Facebook community if they had some questions for you, and I just want to touch on this question because it does have to do with dairy. And so the question is dairy on a spectrum of more or less healthy? In other words, are there some dairy products, i.e. low-fat Greek yogurt, that are better than high-fat cheese? So I feel like we kind of hit on that, but do you want to address that?
There are some that are more romantic than others
Mm,
and that have a better marketing team behind them. So Greek yogurt is the granddaddy of all of them because it sounds classic and it's come from some country that's on the Mediterranean. So it's got to be helping us. And it's a lot of marketing hooey. What you're taking is a dairy product and you're throwing in bacterial cultures. And that's the other thing. People think, oh, gee, if it's yogurt or whatever, it's going to replenish my bacterial cultures.
yes.
We learned quite a long time ago that that does zero good. No, don't get me wrong. You do have a gut microbiome. It's bacteria and some other microorganisms that some of which are healthy and some not so healthy, and you need the healthy ones. What causes them to grow is not swallowing a little bit of Greek yogurt. That's digested and most of it's knocked out in your stomach, and whatever part gets through is trivial in comparison to the populations already there. What matters is everything else you eat. If you're eating a high fiber diet, that's the equivalent of making your garden rich with the right kind of soil that roses can grow in. If you're eating a rotten diet, talking about burgers and chicken wings, things like that, and cheese, that's the equivalent of having rocky soil that nothing can grow in. And so you're going to have bad bacteria, and all the probiotics in the world aren't going to help you. So anyway, I hope I haven't disillusioned everybody, but we see this a lot. You see this with extra virgin olive oil. I mean, what a brilliant name. Let's call it virgin, and people will buy it. Um, you get the idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that so much of this is really um, deprogramming from really good marketing. And that's not as sexy as really good marketing, you know? And there's a lot of it because we've heard this, certainly from the time I was young. I mean, you need to eat your dairy to have strong bones, and if you don't eat dairy, that's weird, you know? So,
Well, let me cite two studies that are really important. For a long, long time, it was really hard to tease out what the relationship was between dairy products and breast cancer, partly because it was really hard to find people in America who weren't consuming dairy in one kind or another. Even lactose intolerant people who wouldn't consume milk, they typically could eat cheese because the lactose had been removed. So researchers at the Adventist Health Study 2 did an amazing thing. And researchers love studying Seventh-day Adventists. When I started my research career, I thought, what are you doing? Why are you studying Seventh-day Adventists? And of course, you figure it out. It's because there are tens of thousands of people in the Adventist community who will willingly volunteer for research studies. They're very health conscious, but they are all non-smoking teetotalers, but they vary in diet. So anyway, researchers put them all under the microscope all day long. Anyway, what they discovered, Gary Fraser and his team published this result, I think it was 2020. They were able to find tens of thousands who were not consuming dairy at all, and some consuming a little dairy, and some consuming a lot of dairy because they're lacto vegetarians. And they blew me away. The more dairy people consume, from a quarter cup a day to a half a cup to a cup to 2 cups of dairy, breast cancer went right up with it. And they said it's because of the estradiol. The cow's body makes the hormone. The hormone goes in your body. Your breast cells have a receptor called the alpha, estrogen receptor alpha. The estradiol attaches right to it and increases the risk of cancer. And by the way, you have an estrogen receptor beta, separate receptor, which is where the isoflavones in soy attach, and that's like the brake on cancer. That's the one you want. All right, so anyway, people thought, well, that's an amazing study. On the heels of that, another study came out, and it was from the China Biobank, the China Kadoorie Biobank study. 500,000 people in China. And they took advantage of the Chinese population having westernized over time. China is not the land of cheesecake. It's not a big pizza, dairy consuming area. I mean, dairy was like not their thing. But westernization has meant it is kind of their thing for maybe 1 in 5 people in China in a fairly big way. And they came up with the exact same finding that we found in American Adventists, that those who avoid dairy have really low rate of breast cancer. Those who consume even a little bit, like a quarter of a cup of dairy, minuscule amount, their risk of breast cancer went up about 17%. Now, if you have not a quarter cup, but a full cup, multiply 17% increased risk times 4, 68% increased risk of breast cancer. Yes, that's what they found.
Wow.
And so they agree with this. So we now are fairly certain that the hormones that the cow's body produces and gets into milk increases the risk of breast cancer in women, prostate cancer in men. The answer is avoid it. If you want almond milk on your cereal, great. Soy milk on your cereal, great. But the cow's milk was designed for the calf. That's it.
Okay, and that's great, because I think a lot of people too have the question of, okay, well, what if I just have a little bit? And so you just answered that. If you have a little bit, then your chances for breast cancer will go up, as well. So probably best just to not at all and avoid that risk altogether from that particular food.
Yes, and you'll find the substitute that you like. I mean,
Yeah,
there are a zillion brands to choose from, and pretty soon you're going to be glad that you switched.
just no coconut, no coconut milk, coconut
I
yogurt,
would avoid
the
I
saturated
avoid,
fat.
yeah,
Yeah.
the coconut fat is so heavily saturated,
Hmm.
unfortunately. So,
As
and same
delicious
with
as it
same
is.
with palm oil. Same with
Hmm.
palm oil. The coconut oil, palm oil, if you see them added to foods, skip it.
Okay. All right, so that's the lowdown on dairy. That was very informative. Now I want to move over to weight loss. Now you just had a book come out recently called The Power Foods Diet: The Breakthrough Plan That Traps, Tames, and Burns Calories for Easy and Permanent Weight Loss. So I want to talk about that. I want to start with just asking you this: how do people know? And this might seem like a really basic, simple question, but how do people know what is a good weight for them?
Great question. Because most people aren't at a particularly good weight. And when I say particularly good weight, I mean a weight that will keep you healthy or unhealthy. Um, the crude measure that actually works okay is the body mass index.
Okay.
You could go online and put in BMI calculator, body mass index calculator. Your body mass index is your weight, but it's adjusted for how tall you are. And if you type in BMI calculator, it'll say, how tall are you? How much do you weigh? And it'll give you your BMI. And if your BMI is between 18 and a half and 25, that's the area where your weight is not really going to contribute in a big way to health issues. Now, there are some caveats that are pretty well known. It can't differentiate between a really muscular person and a person who's got a lot of body fat. Although 98% of your listeners are not muscle developed people. If we have extra weight, it's mostly fat. But the BMI can't sort that out. Also, there are some exceptions to this. Up until the age of menopause, extra body fat does not increase breast cancer risk. Once you hit menopause, it's exactly the opposite, and extra body weight increases breast cancer risk. So the BMI is a crude measure, but it's adequate for most people, and pretty good way to go. And I might say also, if you're on kind of the lower end, I said 18 and a half to 25, but with regard to say fertility, if you're at 19, 20, 21, your fertility is higher than if you're at 24.9. So that's the window.
So for the average person who is not like a triathlon and not, super, super muscular, then the BMI would be a good place to start to get a range.
Yeah, yeah, it's fine for everybody, and there are issues about it, but it's an okay crude guide.
Yeah, and I think it's also accessible to people because anybody can just, find it on the internet, put in their height and
Yeah,
weight and get the number.
yeah, and one reason I really like this is once in a while somebody will say to me, "I need to gain weight," and I'll say, Why do you feel you need to gain weight?" And they'll say, "Well, my husband says I'm too skinny, or my wife says I'm too skinny, or something like that." So I say, "Well, wait a minute, is that because everybody you know is heavier than you?" Nowadays, 75% of the American population is in the overweight or obese category. And so the 25% who is in the normal BMI range that I just mentioned, other people might look at them and not remember what it was like to have a normal body weight. And by the way, this is not anybody's fault. Well, it is somebody's fault. I'm going to blame the industry for finding ways to make foods irresistible and marketing them like crazy and making us feel bad if we're not including cheddar cheese and ice cream in our routine. Um, but anyway, for a lot of folks, it's good for them to know if you're in that range, there is no reason for you to gain weight.
Right. Okay. Good, good, good message there. Um, so what is then, okay, I have a lot of questions about this. So what would be your starting place if somebody's like, okay, I'm not in that range, I want to lose weight, where do you start?
What I would suggest you might do is, and by the way, a generation ago, I wouldn't have said this. A generation ago, the whole idea was to take this out of your diet, take that out of your diet because they're really unhealthy foods. And there's something to be said for that. But in 2015, Harvard researchers discovered this most amazing thing. They followed more than 100,000 people, and they discovered that the more people ate of certain specific foods, the more weight they lost as the years went by. And we thought, wait a minute, wait. Counterintuitive. If I'm going to eat more of something, I got to gain at least some weight. I mean, even if it's healthy, if I'm eating more, I'm going to gain weight. That is not what they found. They found that if you eat more of certain foods, the more you increase that food, the more weight you will lose. And of course, now we know why. There are certain foods that reduce your appetite. So I eat a lot of it today, but my appetite for kind of everything else just kind of gets tamed. I'm not going to be overeating. Or there are certain foods that actually trap calories so that you don't absorb those calories anymore. There are foods that do that. It's really cool. The high fiber foods will do that. And then maybe the biggest one is there are foods that actually ramp your calorie burning speed up. So you're more like, I mean, you may be 58 now, but you were a teenager once and you're going to burn calories just like you did at that time. And we know how to do that now. So I can make you burn calories faster today. And we know how to do that with certain foods. So what I would say is take a week, look at the power foods, bring them into your diet, and figure out the ones you like. And I'll give you two for starters. There are a whole bunch of spices that work. Ginger works. Hot peppers will work. The ones that are loaded with a little spicy capsaicin. But take cinnamon. Everybody loves cinnamon. But we don't need much of it. We've got that jar of cinnamon that's been like on our shelf for 45 years. One day I'll use that up. Well, I've got a French toast recipe that has some cinnamon on it. And cinnamon goes into your body and increases a little adrenaline in your blood that ramps up your metabolism just a bit. And blueberries contain anthocyanins. That's the blue pigment, anthocyanins in the blueberry, that also raise your metabolism. So I've got a blueberry maple syrup that's going to go on my cinnamon French toast, and you eat as much of it as you want. Yes, as much as you want. Now, don't take a funnel and jam it in, but just eat until you're happy. And you just ate America's favorite brunch food, and it is a slimming food. And at lunch, I've got a Southwest chili for you. And at dinner, I've got a penne arrabbiata. Arrabbiata is Italian it means angry, but to a chef it means kind of moderate spice. And my penne arrabbiata will just blow your socks off because it's delicious. Well, each of these has power ingredients. So what I would do is I'd take a week and just take the power foods and see which ones you like, write them down, and then I would take 3 weeks and eat those foods. Stand on the scale before and after and see what happens. Don't worry about portions, don't worry about calories, don't worry about carbohydrate. Do read the chapter in my book about the foods that don't love you back, because there are a lot of things that people eat thinking that they will lose weight, like salmon. Or I'm going to break your heart with this one, avocado toast. It is not a slimming food. And there are some reasons for that. So when people put this to work, the weight loss is effectively automatic, and everything else is good too. I mean, their cholesterol's improved, and they feel better.
Okay, so it's about the food for sure. And I imagine this is everybody should go buy your book, The Power Foods Diet, to see the rest of these power foods, as you call them. And you brought up a good point. I mean, so if somebody were to say, okay, I'm going to incorporate a bunch of these power foods, and I'm also going to keep in the rest of what I'm eating and doing kind of like a hybrid of, I don't know, whether it's a Mediterranean style diet or even the standard American diet. I imagine the more power foods you eat and the less of that other stuff, the animal-based foods, the better results you'll get.
Yeah, that's right. But I'll tell you, what I recommend people not do is what almost everybody else says you should do. What doctors will often say is, I want to meet you where you are. And I just want you to take some baby steps and, have a vegetable every couple of days. I say, that's ridiculous. Forget it. That's like, the person who wants to get into the swimming pool in the middle of June and they kind of walk down step by step down the stairs of the swimming pool. It's really kind of cold and you're wondering, why the hell am I doing this? Forget it. If you got a weight issue and you want to cure it, take my hand. You and I are jumping in the deep end together. So I want to cure you. It's like, let's say, this idea of I'm going to mix good foods with bad foods. It's, if you came to me with pneumonia and I put you on an antibiotic and you say, well, you want me to take this antibiotic 3 times a day? What if I take it just once? Or every other day I'll take it? Do you think you're going to get better? Now, let's cure you and then stop the antibiotic. If you got a big weight problem, let's work together on a powerful method that will give you results really fast. And you might say, well, I'm not sure I want to do this forever. Fine, but compromise later. Let's cure you first. Now, we here at Barnard Medical Center, we deal with thousands of people. They've got diabetes and high blood pressure and a cholesterol issue and a lot of weight and GERD and all kinds of stuff. And I say, let's cure these things as best we can. So we take a week and we do what I just described. We figure out the foods that really I like, and it depends on where you are. Let's say Taco Bell is where you are. Not the pinnacle of culinary art, but if that's where you are, what are you having? Well, I'm having the meat taco. How about the bean burrito? Okay, I'll have the bean burrito. Hold the cheese? Okay. Have a couple jalapenos on there? Yeah. Fine. That's you. Great. Or you like to cook? I got recipes for you. Oh, and by the way, if you don't mind, let me show you this. Dustin Harder, this is the book. Dustin Harder and Lindsay S. Nixon are the recipe developers. They are geniuses. Dustin did all the food photography. And when Dustin sent this to me, I said, look, that is about 2 inches away from food porn, Dustin. And he said, that's the idea. I want people to enjoy it, have fun with it. So you'll figure out the foods that you really like, get away from the ones that don't love you back. And then for 3 weeks, let's do that. For 3 weeks, no animal products. Keep the greasy foods low. Pump in the power foods. You will feel transformed in 21 days. Not only physically, but your tastes will start to prefer healthier foods. They are going to guide you. They are going to take your hand and bring you to the healthier foods, and you're going to reach your goals this way. If we fool around with it, we're kind of punishing ourselves a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I like that. I'm a kind of rip the Band-Aid off quick kind of person.
Well, yeah, but that hurts. Penne arrabbiata doesn't hurt. It's delicious.
Right.
So these foods aren't going to hurt you. So there you are. By the way, we did a study a couple years ago. We brought in 62 people who wanted to lose weight. Half of them went Mediterranean, half of them went vegan. After 16 weeks, they switched to the opposite diet. So the people who did Mediterranean first then did vegan and vice versa. And I got to tell you, the Mediterranean diet may be better than what people were doing before, but it really does not cause weight loss.
Hmm.
It just doesn't. It's because it's got some chicken fat and some fish fat and olive oil, which has 9 calories in every gram. And it also doesn't lower cholesterol levels. It is good for certain things. I mean, it will lower blood pressure a bit and is better than what people were eating before. But if you really want to tackle weight loss, Mediterranean diet's not going to get you there.
Yeah. It's the power foods. And so a lot of people will think, okay, well then vegan eating is the way to go. But again, you have so many really highly processed vegan foods as well that have a lot of saturated fat. So what you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, are really more whole plant foods.
No and yes. Yes to the ones that are fatty, like a donut,
Mm-hmm.
where fat gets brought in. And this is going to be on the test. Fat has 9 calories in every gram. A gram of any kind of fat, beef fat, chicken fat, olive oil, corn oil, avocado oil, 9 calories in every gram. Carbohydrate has only 4. So if you have cornflakes, you took corn and you smashed it up and you made it into a cornflake, you added sugar and vitamins and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. That's a processed food, but it's not going to make you fat. It's not going to increase your cholesterol. It's not bad. Um, but if processing means putting a whole bunch of fat into it or something like that, it is a problem. And things that are not processed, like a coconut taken straight off the tree, that coconut and the avocado is so loaded with fat that even though unprocessed, it is going to
Mm-hmm.
slow, I'm sorry to say, it's going to slow down your calorie burn.
Yeah. And while we're on this topic, what about nuts and seeds? Because those, well, I mean, they are quite processed because really it would take a lot to get a nut out of its shell. But where do you stand with nuts and seeds on this?
Okay, mixed verdict. Let's say you're skinny, healthy, you don't have diabetes. I would say that maybe an ounce a day of nuts is a really good source of vitamin E. And an ounce is you pour the almonds in your hand and put them in the palm of your hand. And once they hit your fingers, stop. That's an ounce.
Okay, it's a good
Um,
one.
yeah, and um, don't throw them in your mouth yet because if you do, you'll fail your hand again. Nuts are irresistible, especially if they are salted, roasted, smokehouse. I mean, the
Yeah.
human spirit doesn't have the strength to resist, eating a lot. So what I do is what you could do instead is use them as an ingredient. Crumble them up, put them on your pancakes or on your oatmeal or something like that. That's a better way to do it. But they've got vitamin E. Vitamin E reduces the risk of Alzheimer's. That's good. Now, if I want to lose weight, then nuts have a lot of fat in them. And even if it's from an almond, it's 9 calories per gram.
Right.
And so nuts and nut butters, avocados, and vegetable oils in general are going to slow down your weight loss. But as you said, and you could ask any squirrel authority, the squirrel will say to you, those nuts, they're like in a tree. And I got to go up there and get them, and they're in a shell, and it's a big job, and so I can only eat so many. But modern life takes those nuts, shells them, salts them, puts them in a packet, puts them right at the 7-Eleven when you went in there to buy a banana and there were the nuts and you couldn't resist. So that's modern life.
Okay. And would you say the same thing with seeds, or is there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
would I would say the same for seeds, but
Okay.
but for whatever reason, people tend not to go crazy with seeds. So if you're having
Yeah.
chia seeds or flax seeds or something like that, I'm not worried about that. The
Yeah.
amount is trivial.
Okay. You hit on carbs because I mean, you can find all kinds of information on the internet, but a very big belief of people is that if you want to lose weight, you have to stay away from carbs. So, and I know you've probably talked about this a lot, but can you just kind of hit on that briefly?
Okay, yes. Well, 55% of your calories are carbs. Carbohydrate. Bananas, apples, oranges, grapes, berries, rice, pasta, bread, sweet potatoes, potatoes. If you throw out any 55% of what you are eating, I promise you, you'll lose weight. So if you throw out the bad 55%, you'll do much better. The carbohydrates are often the healthiest things that you're eating. Um, where people really run into trouble with this, first of all, people don't want to do that long term. And so they'll lose weight because they're eating smaller portions. And if they compensate by eating more of the bad foods, you don't lose weight at all. About 1 in 3 low carb dieters, their cholesterol levels rise rapidly because meat isn't a carb. And so you're eating meat and your cholesterol level goes up. That's not good. Um, so carbohydrate has gotten a bad rap. But if you look at who is the skinniest in whether it's the Adventist studies or any other studies, the skinniest people on the planet are, if you compare omnivores to semi-vegetarians to pesco-vegetarians or lacto-ovo or vegans, the vegans are substantially slimmer than the others, and they're in fact the only group in these epidemiologic studies that's really smack in the middle of the healthy weight range. And they're not worrying about carbs, but no, have it be healthy carbs. Have rice and sweet potatoes and lots of fruit. Fruit gives you healthy antioxidants and will help you live longer.
Well, that's good news because carbs are delicious and so satisfying to eat as well. So, um, okay, I want to talk quickly about menopause. Now, when you were on the podcast last time, we had a great talk about hormones. Actually, when your book about hormones came out, but I want to talk about menopause because what I hear a lot is women who are just going through menopause or starting or just kind of in the middle of it, and they say, okay, well, I was able to be slim before menopause, but now it's just I can't do it, something has changed, and so they really struggle. These power foods and this new book that you have and all of the research, can you talk a little bit about how menopause comes into play and if there's things that need to be considered for those particular people?
Yes. Back almost 20 years ago, we started investigating this. We brought in 64 women. They were all after the age of menopause, and they all had weight problems. That was what made them come in. And I got to tell you, they had all done Atkins, South Beach, Jenny Craig Nutrisystem, cabbage soup. They'd done all these things, and they lost weight, and they put the weight back on, and they'd done one diet after another, and they weren't getting where they wanted to be, and da da da. And we said, as a research study, we randomly assigned them to either a more conventional diet or to a diet that was no animal products and limiting and greatly limiting oils. In fact, those were the only rules. No animal products, keep oils really, really low. And so people were free to eat spaghetti and pancakes and chili, as long as it was plant-based chili. And I gotta confess, I hadn't realized about week 3 or 4 of the study, somebody came in and said, Dr. Barnard, Twizzlers meet your guidelines. I said, what are you talking about? There's no animal products, there's no oil in them, it's just sugary, starchy, artificially colored junk. So anyway, all right. So anyhow, so they were just following the 2 rules. No animal product, keep oils low. They lost weight about a pound per week. After 14 weeks, they lost 13 pounds. We tracked them for 2 additional years. They kept getting skinnier. They never regained the lost weight. But so that was big. That was important. You're not limiting carbs or calories or portions. But the other thing, people came in on day 1. You sit in a chair in our exam room, and I'm going to measure your metabolism, your calorie burning speed. And everyone said the same thing. Oh, hey, when I was a kid, I could eat anything. Wouldn't gain much weight. Now I just look at food and I'm just gaining weight. So we measure their metabolism. And we measure it in a certain way. You put on a mask, and I give you a test meal. I know how many calories are in the meal. And then I put on the mask, and I'm measuring your carbon dioxide output and your oxygen input. And that shows how fast your body is burning up those calories. And then, 14 weeks later, come back in, sit in the same chair, put on the same mask, and I'm going to give you the very same test meal. And what we found is their metabolism was 15% higher than it had been before. Why? Okay, 45 seconds of hard science. Inside your muscle cells, your muscles are your calorie burners. You've heard people say you need a little muscle mass to burn calories. That's true. Your muscles have, inside each muscle cell, little organelles, little tiny organelles inside the cell, called mitochondria. The mitochondria take the foods that you eat and burn them up, and they turn them into energy. Part of that's body heat, part of that is strength, part of that is helping you move. But if you eat cheese pizza or any other fatty food, fat particles get inside the muscle cell. Some of them get in body fat, some whatever, but some fat particles get into the muscle cell and they slow down the mitochondria. The longer the time goes on and you're accumulating fatty foods that you've been eating, chicken wings, a donut, extra virgin olive oil, any fat, it gets inside the muscle cells, it slows down the mitochondria. This happens within 72 hours. If you come into my laboratory and I start feeding you fatty foods, I can park your metabolism inside of 3 days. So what I want to do is do the opposite. Why vegan? Because it's got no animal fat in it. Why low fat? Because I want to get the fat out of your muscle cells so that your mitochondria burn again. And that will happen. And it happens quickly. So I'm getting you back to where you were before. If you think 52 years old or 60 years old means I'm ancient, my clock is ticking. Forget it. You're a young person still. You got decades ahead of you. And the reason your metabolism is slow has nothing to do with your genes and nothing to do with the calendar. It has all to do with foods that have basically slowed down your mitochondrial action. And we can reverse this. And we start it now. And we start it by taking your mitochondria and cleaning them out and letting them burn calories again. And you're going to feel it. And that's why the weight loss becomes really, really easy.
That was great. Yeah, I had a vision of a little oven in each of our cells, either
Yeah.
working and becoming hotter or, becoming not as effective. So that was a really good way to put it. And you're right. I mean, I know my mom, for example, she's going to be 81 this year. She eats, a whole food plant-based diet, and she has so much energy. She is lean, she is trim, she doesn't have any health issues. And so I know anecdotally there are women out there who, have gone through menopause and beyond and have been able to you know, feel really good and be at a really healthy weight. So I see it. So thank you for explaining sort of the science behind that. That's really helpful. Let me see if there are any last questions. I also want to know, since we are coming to the end of the hour, what you've written so many books, and you've really, this is your life's work, and you've done this for so long. What keeps you motivated to keep doing this?
Why not? I mean, we're the same thing that got us doing this in the first place. We do research studies where we bring people in who have a health issue,
Mm.
whether it's weight they want to lose or diabetes that they would like to reverse if they can. Or I think the last time we also talked not just about our work on menopausal symptoms, but cramps that
Yeah.
adolescents may be dealing with that keep them in the bathroom instead of in class or on the tennis court. And we've been studying these things, and we found how diet makes a big, big, big difference. And I got to tell you that when I find these things in research studies and we're able to prove them and see what works and see what doesn't work, I just get excited about it, and I want to share that information so other people can try it and can share it. And um, it's a little bit like throwing a rock into a pond. If you found a nugget of information, somebody else can take it. And they try it out and they tell somebody else, or they put it on Instagram or whatever, and then it just ends up propagating information that can save people's lives or make them feel better. That's what this is about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, so many people, when they've found, when they've read one of your books or when they've stumbled upon this, I think that social media has been great for that spreading of information. Um, well, unfortunately, it's the spreading of a lot of information that people have to sift through. But when they do find it, a lot of people are like, "Why didn't I know about this earlier?" Right? Like, why? My doctor never told me about this. I had no idea, and they really feel like they've wasted a lot of time, that they could have been feeling really good. So, why is it that this isn't out there more than it is in the mainstream?
It's nutrition really doesn't get its due in medical training. You've heard this, and it's still true. Um, Research often follows drugs because the pharmaceutical industry stands to make a lot of money from certain things, and so they fund research studies into these things, and they're not really interested necessarily in funding studies on what spaghetti will do,
Right.
or what healthy foods. I'm kidding a little bit, but what healthy foods will do. So our team has come along and done these, and there are other great teams doing this too. Dean Ornish's team recently came out with some amazing studies showing not only that a healthy diet could reverse heart disease, help slow down or reverse cancer progression, but there's a study that came out about maybe 6 weeks or 2 months ago showed that you could reverse early Alzheimer's disease. I mean, these are amazing findings. Um, and so I think people can be forgiven for
Yeah.
having been on the wrong track before because we didn't necessarily have the knowledge that we
Right.
have now. But now that we have it, in my view, my hope is that we will really share this information because right now we have people who are at risk. And the ones I'm most worried about are the 14-year-old who's in high school, pushing their tray down the lunch line, and they're getting foods that the government pushes the school to serve that are going to affect their bodies in a way that by the time they get their high school diploma, they've got unwanted weight, they've got a touch of diabetes, their blood pressure may be up, and they've gotten a punishing message that it was because they were using their too much screen time or they weren't exercising or they were eating too many carbs or and they internalize these toxic messages.
Mm.
And if we realize that there's nothing wrong with them, and there's a lot wrong with the foods that unfortunately are dangled in front of kids and adults in our culture, but that we have the power to change these things, not just for ourselves, but for the next generation. If we do that, I think we really can change the world that we live in.
That's beautiful. Well, I had a couple more questions, but you know what? I think that is a beautiful message to stop on. And I really want to thank you for all the work that you do, you and your team do. And thank you for your time talking with me today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Dr. Barnard.
Well, it's been great talking with you as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and for everybody who does not have the book yet, The Power Foods Diet, go out and get a copy. I'm sure that everybody wants to know what the rest of those power foods are. So I know I'm going to order my copy when I get off this call with you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
We're spreading some life-saving information, I hope.
You got it. Talk to you next time.
Thank you.